Collecting old things has always been a passion of mine. I think I was 10 years old when my grandfather gifted me a 17th century old pocket watch. It was gold plated. I remember that moment vividly, even to this day. I opened the birthday present and it felt like I had received an old lost treasure. I carefully took it out and listened to it ticking for a few minutes. They say that if you take a shell and put it over your ear, you hear the sea, no matter how far it might be. I felt like I was transported back in time, back to the 17th century. When I listened to the ticking of that old watch, I imagined all those gentlemen in their fancy suits and the ladies dressed in beautiful garments walking down the street or dining at expensive restaurants. That's when my passion started. I finally shifted my attention to paintings when I got older. In my mid-20s, I bought my first one. It depicted a man sitting on a chair with a bottle in his hand. It said rum on the stamp. The man had covered his face with one hand and avoided looking at the large wall mirror in front of him. The lower half of the mirror was unclear, but on the upper part, the head of a man was depicted. He had wrinkles on his face, and each line had a story to tell. Dark circles under his eyes completed the desperation and a sadness inside him. His crooked teeth accompanied the gloominess of the painting as a whole. The painting reminded me of my grandfather, in a way. He died of liver failure caused by excessive drinking. I loved that man so much. He was a role model for me. Sometimes, though, our demons win. I just wish he accepted our help. I stuck with paintings to this day. I always visited art galleries and antique fairs in search of a new and old exciting painting that I could add to my collection. A few days ago, I went to the weekly antique fair that I'd been going to for the last 15 years. There, I met a great seller whom I befriended on the spot. It was like an encyclopedia when it came to antiques. Jonas always cut me good deals, and I've always thought a lot of things from him. Mostly art, but I've acquired some other things too. Cutlery, old watches, old lighters, World War I and II memorabilia, and other things which I've either liked very much as works of art or which had been of important historical value. Think it's going to rain today, Harvey? Jonas asked while he put up the teapot on the table. It's overcast, yeah. I think we'll be lucky, though. You got anything for me today, Jonesy? Well, for you, I don't. I do have something for your missus, though. He pulled two porcelain dolls from under the table. A man and a woman who looked like kissing if put in front of one another. Jonesy had brought them from an old woman. She collected porcelain dolls and wanted to downsize a little bit. These two were from the late 18th century, and as always, Jonesy cut me a good deal. I headed home and placed the doll on my girlfriend's piano. She always loved surprises, and I couldn't wait to see her jumping up and down in excitement when she'd seen them. I always liked buying gifts out of the blue, with no special occasion, for people I loved or who were very close to me. I had a few hours left until Tessa came home. I wanted to surprise her even more and cook some pasta. The entire kitchen smelled like an Italian restaurant. The savory flavor of basil floating around in the air. I'd have to lie if I say I wasn't proud of myself. When returning to the piano room, I saw that the two dolls were not on the piano where I placed them. Instead, I found them on the chair. That was weird, to say the least. Not even that, but now they stood back to back, like they just argued and didn't want to speak to each other anymore. I put them back on the piano and I heard Tessa's keys jangling in the front door. I hugged and kissed her, but she was a bit out of it. Hard day, Tess? Yeah, they want the reports until tomorrow, and I'm not entirely done with them. I have to work on late this night, she said. I'm sure you'll get them done, babe. You always do, I told her. You work so hard every time that I even ask myself how you manage to have so much energy. Yeah, me too. I'm going to take a quick shower. Should we order some food after, or you want me to cook something, she asked. They've already took care of that. I cooked us some nice pasta. Felt a bit chefy when I came back from the fair, I said, winking at her. She smiled timidly and headed straight to the shower. While climbing upstairs, I thought to myself how much the dolls brightened her days she'd see them. I heard her calling me. I felt a sense of urgency in her voice. I entered the bathroom and saw her looking at the dolls. They're on the sink now. Are these for me? Yeah. I bought them at the fair. I wanted to give you a nice gift, I said. Thank you, honey. I love them. Look how cute they are. I kissed her on the cheek and nodded. Closing the door, I asked myself if I was going crazy. I could feel something was beginning to feel wrong in this house. Later on we ate, and she saw I was tense and nervous. You alright, Harv? Yeah, it's just those dolls. I left them on the piano. I don't know how they got in the bathroom, I replied. She looked at me confused. I had never seen that look before. Maybe you forgot to put them in the bathroom, she asked. No, babe, I'm not crazy. I think something's wrong with them. I'll take them back and buy you another thing. No, they're mine, she cried. Tessa was changing. I felt that something was wrong with her. Even since she touched those dolls, she was no longer the same. Driven by fear, I decided it was time for me to do whatever it was in my power to get rid of these dolls right away. Okay, Tess, if you like them so much, you can keep them. They are my gift to you, after all, I said. I just hoped that she would fall asleep after finishing doing their reports for work. Then I'd take them outside and throw them in the trash can. It would have been hard. Tess seemed practically glued to them. Her lips went dry and began to crack. Her once blue eyes were now bloodshot. They were twitching violently, and dark circles appeared underneath them. She chewed on her nails until they didn't look like nails anymore. Whenever I tried talking to her, she didn't listen to any word I said. Whenever I tried to hug her, she pushed me away. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. I was even more conflicted and scared because Tessa was herself the prisoner of those things. I couldn't call the police or the ambulance because they would think Tessa was crazy, or that I'm pulling pranks on the cops in the middle of the night. I kept looking at their dolls, and their faces were changing constantly. From what was happiness that I saw in the fair, to anger in the bathroom, and now to pure evil. They grinned in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. Tessa, though, took care of them as though nothing had happened. To her, they were still beautiful. I thought whatever was inside the dolls must have taken a hold of Tessa. Her priority was those damn dolls. The problem was that I fell asleep before her, just for a few moments. When I woke up, though, every light in the house was turned off. Tessa was gone. I called for her, but she was nowhere to be seen or found. I went to every room in the house to search for her. Nothing. The only place left to look at was the basement. I turned on my phone's flashlight and went down there. The air was damp, cold, and heavy. It was freezing. While moving my flashlight around, I saw Tessa standing in the far corner of the room. She was facing the wall. The dolls were standing on a shelf to her left. She was barefoot and wearing a nightgown I've never seen her wear before. Tessa, honey, what are you doing? I'm talking to the dolls, Harvey. They told me you want to harm them and take them away from me. They want to throw them away like a piece of trash. I won't let you do that, she replied. Her head suddenly tilted back and she looked at me. I heard her neck bones crack and her eyes had no color in them anymore. They were devoid of life and humanity. Moving the flashlight down to her hands, I saw she had a large kitchen knife. I shivered and a slump formed in my throat. Heart racing, I barely had the mental clarity to find my words. Tess, what are you doing with that knife? She didn't reply. Letting out a high-pitched, pure demonic scream, she started running towards me. I knew she didn't want to hurt me. Whatever influence these dolls had on her was made her act just like this. This needed stopping as soon as possible, or both of our lives would be over. I ran so fast up the stairs and didn't look back. I just heard her screaming laughs echo throughout the house. Heart wanting to burst out of my chest, I went inside the piano room. Come out, Harvey. I won't hurt you. I just want to talk, she said. Her behavior terrified me. My mouth was dry and it was very hard for me to swallow. I have never seen her acting like this. I played a few notes to draw her attention. The key was still inside the door lock, and I wanted to lock her in there, so I can go back to the basement. There, I'd take those damn dolls, get the lighter and filler from the garage, take them in the backyard, and burn them. I took the key and hid behind the door. Tessa was coming in fast footsteps towards the room. Come out, Harvey, I won't hurt you. I just want to talk. She kept repeating that, like a broken record, again and again. Sweat came down my temples. I watched as she opened the door. The knife was the first thing I saw. Its blade shined in the light, screaming for blood to be shed. I thought that if I pushed the door, Tessa would be caught off guard. She groaned when it hit her. Her appearance worsened. Her eyes were now filled with blood, and the dark circles under them were even darker than before. The nails she bit on earlier were bloody now. She chewed on them until they started bleeding. She looked like something was consuming her, taking over her body and eating away at her spirit. Her hair was all wet, and her whole demeanor was not natural. She looked at me, but she didn't run anymore. She slowly walked towards me, knife in hand. I could hear her bones cracking with each step she took. She lunged at me, knocking me down. I saw stars when my head hit the floor. I came back to it pretty fast, but she jumped on top of me. She raised the knife and dropped it with formidable speed into my right shoulder. Blood stained my white shirt, and the pain was something that I've never felt before. I screamed, and she just laughed. Those cursed dolls were driving her insane. She played with the knife for a little in the fresh wound, twisting and turning it like a maniac. I felt like my life would soon be over. She took it out again and raised it above her head, holding it with two hands. I placed the palm of my left hand above my face. It pierced through, and blood fell on my face, like the droplets of a summer rain. In a rush of adrenaline, I grabbed her wrist with my other hand and squeezed as hard as I could. I pushed her over, managing to get up. I got the knife, ran, and locked the door from the outside. Tessa started banging on the door, and it looked like she'd eventually break it down. My time was limited, and the only purpose I'd had in life at that very moment was to get rid of those porcelain dolls. I limped towards the basement. My right shoulder was torn to shreds, and my left hand had an approximately 3-inch slit in it. I left the blood trail behind me, and this was probably the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. I asked myself if the dolls would still be there on the shelf. They moved as they pleased throughout the house earlier in the day. I shuddered at the thought. I descended the basement stairs. My phone was on the ground, flashlight point upwards. When I picked it up, the light began flickering. Pointing it to the shelf, I saw the dolls with their jaw dropped. They looked like they'd seen something horrible, a thing that they couldn't believe was happening. Still here, you bastards. I'll take good care of you. See this and this? I told them, showing them my wounds. You did this, you goddamn monsters. The moment I grabbed them, Tessa screamed at me to let them go. I limped back to the main floor and stopped in front of the piano room. Blood colored the dolls, coating them in the crimson liquid almost completely. Tess, you know I love you, right? I have to do this for the both of our good. Look what they've done to you. To us, I said. You're a monster and I hate you. Why don't you just leave them alone? Why didn't you take them away from me? Why do you want to kill them? She cried, banging her fist against the door. Honey, Tess, you're not well. You haven't been since you've seen these things, I said, leaving Tessa banging behind the door violently, and she screamed at me not to do it. I first went into the garage. I took the lighter and a gas filler for it. I grabbed those and went to the backyard. I doused the dolls in gasoline and set them ablaze. Their faces continued to morph as they were burning in flames. They went from violent anger to fear to grief, and ultimately to something that resembled hate. Porcelain has a high tolerance to heat, apparently. The only things that burnt were the hair and clothes. The remains were horrible to look at. I crushed them under my foot until they were nothing but bits and pieces. I collected what's left and put them in the jar, which I filled with dirt. I then took it outside in the trash can. I returned to the piano room and found Tessa laying on the floor, unconscious. I shook her, and she woke up after a few minutes. What? Harvey, what happened to you? Oh my God, you're hurt, she screamed when she saw my blood-soaked clothes. You don't remember anything, I asked. No. Something was wrong with these dolls, Tessa. They did horrible things to you. It was like they made you listen to them and follow what they said, I told her. Your appearance was back to normal now. No bloodshot eyes, no dark circles under her eyes, and no blood on her nails. I continued telling her the rest of the story in minute detail, everything that had happened. She started crying and told me she was so sorry. I told her it wasn't her fault. She helped me by patching my wounds, and we just laid in bed. Of course, we couldn't sleep for the following nights. Every creak and every noise in the house made us question everything. Sometimes Tessa managed to catch a shut-eye for a few minutes. She always woke up immediately screaming. Those dolls were giving her nightmares still. I mean, how couldn't they after what just happened? Even if this was the scariest experience in both mine and Tessa's life, it also made us stronger. It united us more. Today, I was finally able to get out of the house. It felt good inhaling the fresh morning air. I wanted to surprise Tessa and bought her flowers and chocolate too. Those never fail. One strange thing happened when I came back home though. As I was walking on the sidewalk, I saw the trash men collecting trash from each house. I waved at them and smiled when they picked up mine. I swear to God that when the rear loader dumped that trash into the hopper, I saw the same two dolls that I smashed, put into a jar, and burned between the trash bags.